Hello, this is a short video on some of the easy maintenance to do on Centrego's Flow 40 Plus ECA system. One of the alarms that might come up on the screen here is where this says, in this box here, a red box that says low salt. Low salt can mean two things. The first thing to check is whether there is sufficient salt in the brine tank. The brine tank is contained in this box here, which also serves as a brine reservoir for the water softener. If there's insufficient salt in here, or if the brine filter is left exposed, then the alarm will read low salt. So check this first, just take the lid off, have a look inside. There's a red ring around the white tube inside. That is the fill line for the salt. So make sure that the salt is filled up to the red line. Also make sure that the salt filter, the filter ball, is at the bottom of the brine tank and fully covered with salt. If there is salt, if the brine tank is empty of salt or the salt ball has been exposed, then the system will have switched off due to the alarm. So refill with salt and then push the e-stop in, release it, the system will start to operate. Give it a few minutes for the brine to go through the system, and then the box here should turn to green saying healthy. So if there hasn't been enough salt in here or the brine ball's been exposed, simply fill it up with salt. Make sure the brine ball is fully covered, press the e-stop, release it, start the machine operating, leave it for a few minutes, and then the system should recalibrate itself and you should get a healthy sign here, and then on the amp reading it should be between 21 and 23 amps. Then you can just leave the system running. However, if there is plenty of salt in here in the brine tank, and the salt ball is fully covered, but it's still reading low salt there, that means that there is too much water going through the system, going through the cell, and the system will need recalibrating. So if the brine tank is full of salt to the right level, if that's working properly, but you're still reading low salt there, that's not an indication of the salt in the brine tank, because you have salt in the brine tank. It's an indication that there's too much water going through the cell and it will need to be recalibrated. So, a trained technician should open the cabinet and the first thing that they should do when they've opened the cabinet is to take a photograph. To take a photograph of the electronics in one photo and the hydraulics in the other. And those photos will act as a reference point, because these should not have been changed at all. So take the photographs, use that as a reference point. Also, with all the wiring is all numbered, both on the wires and the points of where the wires go through. There shouldn't be a need for any technician to replace the wiring or to alter the wiring. These have all been factory set. However, if a technician is going to alter the wiring or remove a wire for whatever purpose, always make sure that it's put back in the right location, using the numbers and using your photograph reference. For the hydraulics, there are a number of components there where the water flowing through has to be in the right direction. Now those components are, and I'll use the screwdriver to point out, the first one is through a Y filter. So this brass connector here is a Y filter, just to filter any debris from the water. And there is an arrow on the filter which indicates the direction of flow of the water. So if this one's going to be removed or replaced, always make sure that it's replaced in exactly the same way, with the arrow pointing in the right direction. The same applies to the flow switch. So this switch, this component allows the water to be switched on and switched off. If this is going to be removed or replaced, always make sure that the arrow here is pointing in the direction of the flow, and you can reference that to the existing system. So always make sure that you can see the existing system that you're going to take out, and make sure that the replacement is put in exactly the same way with the arrow pointing in the right direction. The same applies to the solenoid valves. So we have 4 solenoid valves here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and again those have got a directional arrow on, and make sure that if those are going to be replaced, the direction of water flow is the same as the one that you're replacing. And finally, we have the flow controllers. So there are 3 of these flow controllers. Now they have arrows on, but they're very small. What you can do is use this little shelf, this sloping shelf, as an indication of the direction of the flow. Again, follow what is already in there for the direction of flow, but you can also reconcile that to the fact that the direction of flow is from the sloping end of this little shelf up to the higher end. So that is the direction of flow, using that little shelf as a guide. The last thing to point out is the pressure regulator here, this blue knob. Now that is factory set, so that the pressure inside the system cannot exceed 2 bar. You should not need to, and you should not adjust the pressure regulator. If it is adjusted, then too much pressure might go through the cell and cause a fault in the system or cause the cell to break. Too little pressure and the system is not receiving enough water. So for recalibration, do not touch this or adjust this blue valve. We're now going to recalibrate the flow of water through the system using these flow controller valves. So there are 3 of these in the system. If we go through these, and I'll point those out, there's one at the very top, and that controls a high flow of water going into the cell. There's another one right at the back just below it, and that controls a lower flow of water going through into the cell, and the 2 balance each other out through the solenoid valves. The third controller valve is horizontal, just below the first one, and that controls the dilution of the solution going into the holding tanks. So let's concentrate on the top one. So if there's plenty of salt in the brine tank, but you're still seeing low salt alarm on the system, then it might be because a small amount of debris from dirty water has got stuck in this control valve. So what you do is you look at the top valve, and then you open that up completely by turning it anti-clockwise so that the water flows through the device. And remember that the machine should be on at this stage. So the e-stop should be released, so the machine is operating in order to allow that water to go through. So open this valve up completely by turning it anti-clockwise. That will flush through any debris that might have got caught in the valve. Once you've done that and let it run for about 30 seconds, then close it completely by turning it clockwise. And then turn it anti-clockwise open 3.5 turns using this wheel. So that will reset and recalibrate the high flow going through. You follow exactly the same principle with the low flow controller valve here, flow valve here. So open that completely, let it flush through for any debris that might be caught here, close it completely turning it clockwise, and then turn it anti-clockwise 5 turns, and that will reset the flow controller valve. what should happen then is that once you've left that for a couple of minutes to run, this should turn green and say healthy, and your amps should be between 21 and 23. So you don't need to touch the blue pressure valve, and you don't need to touch the dilution valve. So recalibration is just using these two controller valves, one for the high flow at the top, one for the low flow just further down at the bottom. Open them right up, let them flush through, close them right up. For the top valve, open 3.5 turns. For the bottom one, open 5 turns. And that's it. Then the system will be recalibrated. You should have a green healthy sign, and the amp should read between 21 and 23 amps. So recalibration is simple to do, but just make sure that first of all you follow the instructions, and make sure that if you're also replacing any of the components, that the water flow is in the right direction. The last thing to say is this valve here. So this is the pH adjuster. This has been factory set, and what you should be able to see is that this tube here, which takes the solution from the cathode, so this solution inside here is called catholyte, and you should be able to see a slow but a steady stream of solution mixed with bigger bubbles flowing through this tube. That means that both the anode and the cathode are in balance and they're working correctly. If you don't see any solution or bubbles coming through this tube, just turn the pH valve slightly anti-clockwise until you get that slow and steady stream coming through. And that will mean that the cell is in balance and is working properly. I hope this video has been useful. On the front door you have our QR codes. Go to those QR codes. Not only will you have this video on there, but you'll also have the user manual, which will go into the system, the components, the maintenance, the operation and the recalibration in much greater detail. But hopefully this video will allow you to do quick checks and a quick salt brine check and a recalibration if that's necessary. If you have any other problems, just get back to Centrego again on the QR codes. Then our contact details are always there, and we can talk you through the entire process and help you fault find if any further work is required.